Hello, everybody. This is Empowering Democracy. It is 8 p.m. on Thursday, the 12th of December. And I'm being joined by my good friend, Dee Pierce.
Hello, everyone.
Of Around the World with Dee and Friends. And our topics for tonight are Syria, the first BRICS war. And our second topic is accelerating resistance among the axis, of resistance.
Mm-hmm.
So those were the two topics. The BRICS war topic will be covered by going over an article by Pepe Escobar called "The Syria Riddle: How It May Turn into the First BRICS War." Shall I start?
Yeah, go start.
At BRICS?
Yes.
Okay.
Or you could share. Did you share out?
I'm going to share it out right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there it is. I should also share the broadcast on Facebook while I'm at it.
Mm-hmm. Let everybody know we're live.
Let everybody know we're here
Mm-hmm.
and we're live. So there we go. Okay. So this first piece, is by Pepe Escobar, as we indicated. It's called "The Syria Riddle: How It May Turn into the First BRICS War." Pepe published this on December 4th, 2024. I think it was originally published at the Strategic Culture Foundation, but I picked it up at the UNS Review. Yes, it was republished from the Strategic Culture Foundation. So there's a little picture there. People are painting a wall with Ukraine on it. And the Ukraine colors. There is no caption to this, but there is a statement just below it. It says the global majority should be on full alert. The greater Idlib Astan attack is part of a complex, connected operation. Pepe says the timeline tells the story. November 18th, Ronan Bar, Israel's Shin Bet chief, meets with the heads of MIT, Turkey's Intel. November 25th, NATO chief, Mr. Mark Ruda, meets with Turkey's Sultan Erdogan. That, of course, is a bit of sarcasm, because Erdogan is the president of Turkey, but he's supposed to regard himself as the Sultan. So I guess that's why that term was used by Pepe. On November 26th, Salafi jihadis that were assembled by Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, formerly Nusra Front, supported by Turkish Intel, plus a hefty red jihadi coalition launched a lightning-fast attack against the city of Aleppo. The jihadi offensive originated in Greater Idlibistan. That's where tens of thousands of jihadis were holed up, according to the now proven failed 2020 Damascus-Moscow strategy, which Turkey had to grudgingly accept. The jihadi mob comprises scores of mercenaries who crossed over from where else? Turkey. The mob was composed of Uyghurs, Uzbeks, Tajiks, Ukrainians, even ISIS-K imports. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Esmail Baghai earlier this week confirmed the Salafi jihadi offensive was coordinated by U.S./Israel. Baghai did not mention Turkey, even as he stressed the terror attack happened immediately after Israel accepted a ceasefire with Hezbollah, already broken by Tel Aviv dozens of times, and after Netanyahu publicly accused Syrian President Bashar al-Assad of, quote, playing with fire, unquote, by allowing the transit of modern Iranian missiles and military equipment via Syria to Hezbollah. Right before the ceasefire, Tel Aviv smashed virtually all communication routes between Syria and between Syria and Lebanon. Netanyahu subsequently stressed that the focus now is on the Iranian threat, essential to smash the axis of resistance. According to a Syrian special services source talking to RIA Novosti, Ukrainian advisors played the key role in the capture of Aleppo, providing drones and American satellite navigation and electronic warfare systems, and teaching Syrian collaborators and Islamic Party of Turkestan operatives how to use them. Syrian Arab Army, SAA communications were completely jammed by these electronic warfare systems. Quote, the assault groups and drones were equipped with encrypted GPS devices and extensive use of AI, so that the use and also navigation of attack UAVs, UAVs, of course, unmanned aerial vehicles, and kamikaze drones took place from a long distance, unquote. The mechanism was set in place actually months ago. Kyiv made a straightforward deal with Salafi jihadis, drones, in exchange for batches of takfiris to be weaponized against Russia in the U.S.-NATO proxy war in the Ukraine. I'm afraid I don't know what takfiris are. I don't assume they're anything good.
They're not.
What is Turkey really up to? The practical role of Turkey in the Salafi jihadi Greater Idlibistan offensive is as murky as it gets. Over the past weekend, Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan Significantly, also, a former Intel denied any Turkish role. But no one apart from the NATO sphere believes it. No Salafi jihadi in northwest Syria could as much as strike a match without a Turkish intel green light, as the Ankara system funds and weaponizes them. That is good to know. The official Turkey line is to support the Syrian Salafi jihadi, quote, opposition, unquote, as a whole, while slightly deploring the greater Idlibistan offensive. Once again, classic hedging. Yet the logical conclusion, okay, is that Ankara may have just buried the Astana process by betraying their political partners, that is Russia, okay, and Iran. Uh, uh, um, um, uh, Erdogan and Hakan Fidan so far have failed to explain to the whole of West Asia, as well as the global South, how this sophisticated rented jihadi op could have been set up by US/Israel without any knowledge whatsoever by Turkey. In case this would have been a trap, Ankara simply has no sovereign power to denounce it. What the facts do spell out is that a new front has de facto been opened against Iran. US/Israel divide and rule carries the potential to completely smash the Tehran-Ankara entente, and key Russian, mostly aerospace assets will have to be diverted from Ukraine to support Damascus. There's no mystery. For years, Ankara has been dying to control Aleppo, the Syrian city of Aleppo, even indirectly to, quote, stabilize, unquote, it for business to the benefit of Turkish companies, and also to allow the return of a lot of relatively wealthy Aleppo refugees currently in Turkey. In parallel, occupying Aleppo is also an American project, in this case, to seriously undermine the axis of resistance to the benefit of Tel Aviv. What else is new? Sultan Erdogan, now a BRICS partner, once again is in the hot seat. Worse, vis-a-vis two key BRICS members, Moscow and Tehran, expected a lot of detailed explaining. There's nothing that Putin abhors more than outright betrayal. Erdogan took the initiative and called Putin, introducing a twist. He focused on Russia-Turkey economic relations. After the tsunami of sanctions against Russia, Turkey turned into the key privileged bridge between Moscow and the West. Besides, there are substantial Russian investments in Turkey, gas, nuclear, food imports. Both players have always approached the war in Syria connected to geoeconomics. Rent-a-jihadi mobs on a roll. Meanwhile, the facts are again implacable. HTS, the former al-Nusra Front, may not be strictly ISIS. It is rather a Turkey ISIS. Commander Abu Mohammed al-Julani, de facto emir of the ultra-dodgy rebrand, ditched all al-Qaeda variants plus ISIS to form HTS. He does command an array of rent-a-jihadis, mostly from the heartland, and he's a darling of Turkey's MIT. Ergo, he's also a darling of Israel slash NATO. CIA slash Pentagon, each operating their own network, weaponized 21 out of 28 Syrian militias, Salafi jihadi and otherwise, organized by Turkey's MIT into a sort of mercenary, quote, national army, unquote, in Greater Idlibistan, according to Turkish think tank SETA, that is SETA. Syrian analyst Kevork Almasian, he of the longish beard, has shown how the proverbial, quote, former Israeli officials admitted supplying the Greater Idlibistan gang with funds, weapons, ammunition, and even medical treatment. Former Israeli Army Colonel by the name of Mordechai Kedar openly admitted support for, quote, rebels, unquote, to, quote, remove triangle of Hezbollah, Iran, and Assad, unquote. The, quote, rebels, unquote, he said, even manifested their desire to, quote, open Israeli embassies in Damascus and in Beirut, unquote. HTS is the latest incarnation of one of the collective West's favorite toys, the, quote, moderate rebel, unquote. Can you remember Obama slash Hillary? The allegiance of HTS is nearly 100% to Ankara. They hate the Shiites, okay, and Alawites, and run an extensive prison network. It's HTS Salafi jihadis who forced the complete surrender of Aleppo without a fight and filmed themselves in front of the legendary citadel. Excuse me. From 2012 to 2016, only a few dozen SAA soldiers managed to successfully defend the citadel, even when they were completely surrounded. Since the start of the war in 2011, Damascus has never met such a devastating defeat like the fall, okay, of Aleppo. Iraq lived something tragically similar with the fall of Mosul in 2014. It's fair to argue that the absolute the majority of Syrians are against the 2020 Russia-Turkey-Iran deal, which in fact prevented the liberation of Idlib, a major strategic blunder. Yeah, so the three nations created that deal and a safe haven for the jihadis, okay, in Idlib. In Idlib, not Islam, Idlib. It gets worse because the problem actually started in 2018 when the Turks were not even in Afrin, and the liberation of Hamas slash Idlib was interrupted for the sake of liberating the suburbs of Damascus. It's from there that tens of thousands of jihadis were transferred to Idlib. When we got to 2020, it was already too late. Idlib was defended by none other than the Turkish army. The SAA, when it comes to Idlib, proved itself to be an asleep at the wheel disaster. They did not upgrade their defenses, did not try to integrate the use of drones, did not prepare tactical defense against FPV kamikaze drones and observation drones did not pay attention to the scores of foreign spies. No wonder the rented jihadi mob found no resistance to take most of Aleppo in 48 hours. After the 2020 deal, Iran and pro-Iran forces left Syria, especially in the provinces of Aleppo and Idlib. These sectors were transferred to the SAA. Okay, that's the army of the regime in Syria. As for Russian businesses, which are already not exactly interested in being sanctioned by going against the Western blockade against Damascus, they were snubbed by the local clans, tribes, and families. This time it was clear for months that HTS was preparing an offensive. Warnings were sent to Damascus, but the Syrians trusted the deal with Turkey and the reestablished relations with the Arab nations. Big mistake, says Pepe. All that yields at least two serious lessons for Russia. From now on, whatever happens, Moscow will have to rein in these incestuous and corrupt Syrian networks to actually help defending the nation's sovereignty. And what happened in Idlib shows that the war against the Banderistas in Kiev will have to go all the way to the Dniester. But that's a river to the west, okay, of the Dnieper, and not stop at the borders of the Donetsk Republic. If they have to go all the way to the, to the Dniester, sorry, hard to pronounce that. I'm pulling up a map, okay, of the Dniester right now. Trying to figure out here exactly where it is.
All I can say is it's a big mess. It's a huge mess.
It's a big mess. It's a transboundary river in Eastern Europe. It runs first through Ukraine and then through the Moldovan Republic, from which it more or less separates the breakaway territory of Transnistria, finally discharging into the Black Sea on Ukrainian territory again. So obviously that means the Russians are not going to be stopping at the Dnieper River. They're going to the river on the far side, which is further west, or they're going to have to if they want any security. And so that means they're not stopping anytime soon if Pepe is right. So going back to his piece, war on the road and the connectivity crossroads. So far, HTS and the rented jihadi mobs are not making too many mistakes. They're trying to occupy all roads that are feeding the city of Aleppo to impose further battles as far away from the city as possible so they have time for a complete takeover. War in West Asia is an on-the-road affair, either with horses in the desert or with Toyotas. Not much is mined, and there's no mud like in Ukraine. So the Syrian war is in constant flux and always on the road. HTS is already using the M4 highway from Idlib and advancing on sectors of the crucial M5 that runs from the city of Aleppo to Damascus. Meanwhile, the lineaments of a counteroffensive are being put in place. But from Iraq, tens of thousands of Shiites, also Yazidi and Christian militias from Kataeb Hezbollah, the Fatimiyan Brigade, and Hashid al-Shabi, the Popular Mobilization Units, PMUs, very experienced in the fighting against ISIS, entered Syria in the northeast via the Al-Bukamal crossing. The 25th Division / Tiger Forces have respected Commander Suhail al-Hassan. In fact, the best Syrian forces are on the move alongside tribal forces, basically militias from the tribes. Syria is an absolutely key connectivity crossroads, harking back to the ancient Silk Roads. If the U.S.-Israel combo achieves their perennial dream of regime change in Damascus, they block the crucial transit point for Iran to the eastern part of the Mediterranean Sea. So that is what they're after. That is what they're trying to do. They're trying to block the transit point for the Iranian arms to get to the Lebanese. They would also enable / force Qatar to finally build a pipeline to provide natural gas to Europe through Syria, one of the Brzezinski gambits to replace Russian natural gas, and a dossier I was examining in detail already 12 years ago, says Pepe. The U.S. deep state's tactics are not exactly a novelty, trying to divert Russia by focusing on Syria, stretching Moscow out, and relieving pressure on Ukraine right before the signing of the very serious Russia-Iran Comprehensive Strategic Partnership. But there are complicating factors for the U.S. Saudi Arabia, which was an avid Terror supporter at the start of the war on Syria, changed its policy after Russia got involved in 2015. Okay. And now Saudi is also still sitting on the fence, BRICS partner. Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and UAE significantly are supporting Assad against the HTS goons. Syria is absolutely crucial for Russia's overall West Asia African strategy. Damascus is a key Russian connection to Africa, where Moscow is de facto deploying its full global power, as I recently witnessed in South Africa, with some intriguing add-ons in the form of de facto counter-sanctions against Western oligarchs, whose positions across Africa are being serially undermined. BRICS members of Russia and Iran have no other choice. They need to fix, by whatever means necessary, the incompetence displayed by Damascus in the SAA, so they may maintain their access to the eastern part of the Mediterranean, to Lebanon, to Iraq, and beyond. That implies a very serious move, Russia deviating key assets from the battle in Novorossiya to preserve a relatively sovereign Syria. Next section is called Sleepwalking into the First BRICS War. As it stands, the SAA seems to have set up a still fragile defense line in the villages north of Hama. As of today, I have news that Hama has been overwhelmed. So the defense line seems to have fallen. Fabled General Javad Ghaffari, former number 2 to General Soleimani, a specialist in all war on terror vectors, has arrived from Iran to help. By the way, in 2020, he wanted to go all the way to Idlib, in the west. That's why Assad demanded he would have to leave. Damascus opted to freeze the war. Now it's a completely different sort of ball game. The Renta Jihadi NATO Greater Idlibistan mob has zero air defenses. They're now being hit virtually nonstop by Russia's Syrian jets. Situation in Aleppo is dramatic. The HTS-led terror gangs have control over virtually the whole red zone, and the rare sectors not yet invaded are under siege. They're also advancing on the Aleppo-Raqqa front, but so are the U.S.-supported Kurds. That means a NATO advance. In the desert, everything is eerily silent. The Russian army had only 120 people, in Aleppo. Those that survived have left. So what's ahead for Russia? The best possible medium long-term scenario would be to concentrate on Latakia, that's another city in the eastern part of Syria. Teach the Syrian soldiers how to fight Russian style and direct them on how to properly liberate their own country. The immediate step is to realize the dire consequences of offering a safe haven for tens of thousands of terrorists in greater Idlibistan back in 2020. Here I have to remark that it said that this invasion of Aleppo was conducted by 15,000 troops who had been receiving training from the Turks, from the CIA, since roughly 2020. So they've been building up the capability of that army and supplying it with arms, of course, through Turkey. And the next step is to fully understand that if Moscow negotiates a sort of Minsk III agreement with NATO, which is essentially what Trump would push for, Kiev will become Idlib 2.0. And the Banderista gangs will make sure that there'll be new fallen cities of Aleppo inside the Russian Federation. The global majority should be on full alert. The Greater Idlibistan attack is part of a complex interconnected operation with chaos deployed as the preferential tool aimed to turn West Asia upside down and literally set it on fire. That may well be metastasizing into the first BRICS war. The reason I says that is because, of course, Turkey will be on a different side from the Iranians, and the Russians. Turkey is currently a BRICS partner. So BRICS nations will be fighting each other. Then for the first time, if there is such a war. So that was very interesting in terms of a view of facts on the ground that Pepe has. But Pepe wrote this on December 4th, I believe.
Okay.
And today is December 5th. And on December 5th, things changed. Specifically, the important city of Hama was occupied by the insurgents, and they were moving strongly to the city, of Homs. And reportedly, by the end of today, which of course has ended over there, they had gained control over the majority of the population of Syria. They were moving very, very fast, and the help for Syria has not been moving as fast.
Okay, because I had from Press TV had spoken about that they um, had people. Syria decided to move people from Hama so they wouldn't be in the midst of the city being in a war. For the safety of the citizens, they took the citizens out of Hama to a safe location.
Well, that is certainly good. Okay, this is very strange today. There's not a single comment.
I know. I'm wondering where
I mean,
everybody is.
and we have 71 people here.
Maybe they're all watching from X.
They're probably all watching from Twitter. But there are no YouTube comments or Facebook comments, which is very strange.
It is.
Anyway, here we are. So since we have no comments, have you anything more to say about what the situation is, Dee?
I think it's very complicated because you could look at Western sources and they say one thing, and then you look at other sources and you hear something else or reasoning behind certain things, and they'll say the West is, is propagandizing things, creating a scenario. So where the facts are, we just have to keep, you just don't know what to say.
Now, I was watching a piece, and by the way, we have a comment from Monica Augustine, who kindly tells us, "Hi, I'm here on YouTube."
Thank you.
So thank you, Monica, for that. So at least we know someone from YouTube is here. But also, I was watching Mahmoud, uh, uh, OD.
Okay.
I think you know him
Mm-hmm.
or have probably tuned into some of his streams.
Yes.
Uh, he was basically saying that he doesn't know what's going on. It's hard to find, really hard news on what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about the claims of, of both sides. But by all accounts, there's been very rapid progress from the insurgents, and the help for Syria has been taking its own sweet time to get there.
Well, I know there was aircraft, there was bombings going on by Russia at those strikes today.
Yes, I know that also. And supposedly they killed a lot of the insurgents.
Yes.
I think 1,000 to 1,500, which is a considerable portion of the 15,000 that they have, of course. But the Syrian Arab army couldn't seem to stop them and was basically fleeing, from territorial positions. Of course, it's better to lose territory, than it is to lose people.
I think they're looking at the people.
I hope they're looking at the people and that is, what we're looking at. But let's go on to the second of our topics, whether resistance should be accelerated.
Okay.
And there we have some video to look at from Nima Alkershid's show.
Part of the ruling structures of the empire.
Okay, let me get this, stop this for a minute. So Nima of Dialogue Works is on your left. If you look at the picture, and the person he's interviewing is the reporter, the journalist, the producer, and the activist by the name of Laith his last name, okay, is Maruf, Marouf. He's very well known. He's been around in many countries. He was in Canada, okay, for a number of years. I believe that he's Syrian born. Okay, he's been in Lebanon for many years. He was a permanent resident of Canada for a while, but he was treated, I think, somewhat unjustly and badly there. And so he came back to the Middle East and he came to Lebanon. And now he's evidently close to the front and reporting on, on news there. So he's fairly close to Syria, but he has a wonderful, deep knowledge of the area and the history, okay, of the area. And I'm going to pick this up where they start to talk about the issue of whether the axis of resistance has been making a mistake in considering in trying to fight, okay, a war of attrition to get ahead of the colonialists, to throw them out, okay, as opposed to fighting, a more accelerated war to overwhelm them. So he thinks a strategic error has been made, and he starts to talk about it here. And that's the part that I wanted to play of this.
On the other hand, beyond the strategic value of Palestine, the Zionist elite are an integral part of the imperial order. They control most of the media in the West. They control most of the banks. And without them, nobody can get elected, basically. You can't get elected without the approval of those who own the media and or the biggest corporations.
What he's talking about there is in Western countries, you can't get elected without the support of those who are supporters of Israel, the big money supporting Israel. And of course, he's not entirely right about that, but he's largely right about that. We do have some Congress people here, who are opposed to Zionism, and they do get elected, but they are very, very few. Very, very few.
Thanks. So the even if there is a leader in a Western country that decides I want to give up on the Zionist colony, they'll be out of power. Okay, there's no way that this will happen. So as we see, because of this miscalculation by the axis of resistance, thinking that they can have a war of attrition against the Zionist colony that may take 5 years, but it will end, they miscalculated. They didn't understand that the whole Western Empire will hinge all its existence on maintaining the Zionist colony, even if it means the collapse of international law, of the international agencies that govern international law that have come into effect since the end of World War II. The West decided that they will risk all of that to maintain the Zionist colony. And
So that point is tremendously important, because we're seeing the West throw international law, which for many years served the West very, very well and was created by the West in order to serve their interests. And yet, because of what's going on in West Asia today, the West is throwing international law out. In other words, they are unmasking international law as a hypocrisy from their point of view. This is very ironic, because Okay, because we have the Eurasian powers, Russia, China, Iran, and of course the powers in the Middle East who are rallying to the standard of international law, trying to enforce it through Western created institutions and being blocked all the time by the United States and its veto power, at the UN. Not always only by the United States, of course, because the British are most often involved in this too, and the French as well, but not as often, okay, as the United States. The United States always is defending actions that are in violation of international law. Every single day at the UN, almost, these days, going forward.
They kind of set fire to 100 years of propaganda that the West built about human rights, democracy, and all of that, and equality. The propaganda that, billions and billions, trillions of dollars that the West spent on in movies and TV shows and all blah, blah, blah. They decided they'll burn it all down as long as they can keep control of Palestine. And that is where the miscalculation of the axis of resistance was. And I try to get people to understand this. I have no access to people in power in the axis of resistance, but on any platform I was in, I was trying to make people understand this. And I hope right now the leadership of the axis of resistance understands this reality. And if they do, then they need to understand, shift in their military strategy from just a solidarity front to the Palestinians and a war of attrition in a defensive posture to go on the offensive and look at these Wahhabi death squads. They can reach Aleppo in 2 days. Well, I am sure the Radwan forces of Hezbollah can reach Jerusalem in 2 days if they invade. Iran should stop just throwing.
Okay, so just to clarify, what he's doing here is calling for an invasion of Israel by Hezbollah from Lebanon, specifically to go to the West Bank and defend the West Bankers, against the Israelis. And also, of course, the implication is if he's going to go to the West Bank, Hezbollah is going to go to the West Bank. One of the things it might do is to clean the settlers out of there. Because, of course, the settlers, are illegally there. They had no right to occupy the West Bank. The Israelis have no right to occupy the West Bank. Now, one might raise the question, is Hezbollah strong enough to clean the Israelis out of the West Bank? I don't know. Hezbollah probably has about 150,000 fighters. That's far less than the Israelis have. But the Israeli forces have become used to killing, either unarmed civilians or very lightly armed resistors. And I think it's a general opinion among many military people that while the Israeli Air Force is very good, that the ground forces in the IDF are no longer what they were 50 years ago. And many people think they're no match for the Hezbollah ground forces. So even though the Israelis would have a numerical advantage, over Hezbollah, Many people think it's unlikely that they would be able to win out if there were an invasion, by Hezbollah. But this is the first time I've heard anybody call for invasion of Israel by Hezbollah's crack troops. And I think that's quite interesting that he made that suggestion.
It was a good suggestion. It makes sense.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense too. Okay, and especially if Iran,
missiles
if the IRGC
without
would go that way.
a plan of continuing the battle. For instance, Iran still has to respond to the last Zionist attacks and the pager attack that injured the ambassador of Iran in Beirut. Well, they should throw thousands of missiles at the same time and destroy the air force of the Israelis, which is the only thing that the Israelis have that is actually advantageous in the battle. Similarly, all the
Okay, so that I think he's the only other person, other than Dee and myself, who've been calling for the Iranians to hit the Israelis with thousands of missiles continuously. What we often have talked about is that in order to change the political situation on the ground inside of Israel, that they should be targeting the settlers. He's talking about, though, destroying the air power of Israel up on the ground in perhaps a single night by firing 2,000 missiles. Or what he said is actually thousands of missiles. He doesn't say 2,000, but it's been said that the Iranians have the capability to fire 2,000 ballistic missiles at once, at the Israelis. The idea of targeting their air power, of course, is very, very good, because once their air power is gone, then they would be vulnerable to the ground forces of Iran, the IRGC. The IRGC are not the only ground forces, of Iran, but if you added them to the Hezbollah ground forces, that would certainly be enough to take care of the Israeli ground forces. And we're not even talking about most of the armed forces of Iran. The Iranians have about, I think, 1 million soldiers, in their army. They vastly outnumber, the Israelis in that way. So once you take care of the air power of Israel, then Israel stands open to the ground forces, of other nations. And if you say, well, if they still would have the protection of the United States in the area and the U.S. bases in the area, then the counter argument to that is, yes, there would be some of that, but of course our aircraft carriers are highly vulnerable to the Iranian missiles. And if the Russians get involved in the area, both the Iranians and Russians have hypersonic missiles that we have no defense against. The aircraft carriers would be sitting ducks, and the bases of the United States surrounding Iran would be sitting ducks for the missiles also. So it would not be such a good war for Israel and the United States. But going on.
American bases in Syria and Iraq should be destroyed right now before Trump comes into power.
So that's, I think, another suggestion. He's saying the Iranians should immediately target the bases surrounding Iran and also the Iraqi bases, really all the bases in West Asia should be targeted with missiles and should be destroyed. And he's being very explicit that these attacks should occur before Trump comes into office.
In order to change the balance on the ground before Trump comes into power, or otherwise, Iran will find itself under a huge attack from all the American bases in the region that have yet to be harmed. So no, if they wait, if Iran waits till Trump comes, I can tell you from this day on, I am 100% sure that they will be attacked, and there will be thousands upon thousands of Iranian martyrs for no reason, but this defensive posture that the axis of resistance is taking.
I have to agree with them that an offensive posture, is far better, because if the bases are destroyed, at this point, then it will be difficult for Trump to do anything except to try to negotiate a peaceful solution to the crisis. And I think that that would end up by being the classical kind of two-state solution in the Middle East. If Trump sees that the balance on the ground is completely turned against the Israelis, he has the choice of sending over American troops, and where is he going to get them? In other words, right now, the Army has only roughly 400,000 troops, and I think the Marines have about 100 to 150,000. And that assumes that we could find a place to land in the Middle East. Now, some people would say, well, we could land in Israel. But I think that's not so easy, because our landings, would be under the gun of the Iranian missiles and the Hezbollah missiles. It would be very difficult for us. We would not have a friendly port to land in, because I don't think that the Saudis are going to get involved on our side. I don't think a lot of other formerly friendly Middle Eastern countries, or West Asian countries, I should say, are going to get involved on our side.
No.
At this point.
And here,
Not in the face of the genocide in Israel.
no. Yeah, Monica says here in the comments, I agree with Lath. Axis need to go to offense, otherwise it's going to get worse.
Right.
Exactly. We all agree with that.
Yes, we do all agree with that. We've been talking here now for weeks. We've been waiting for the Iranian for their answer to the October 26 attacks, and wondering why they haven't actually replied. They promised it so definitely. We know they have the military capability to do it, because we've seen the capability, even though it hasn't been exercised on people. We've seen those hypersonics in action. We know they have them, and there are military estimates, of course, by all sorts of people as to the number of ballistic missiles they have that they can use, and the hundreds of thousands of drones. In other words, their stockpile of rockets and drones and missiles and all, it's probably 1.5 million. It's huge. 10 times as much as Hezbollah has, at least.
Right, and we spoke about with the West Bank, with stopping the settlers, an
Yes,
intervention. We talked about that already.
yeah, we talked about that, and we know about 1 million people have already left Israel. And I don't think it would take too much in the way of missile fire to get the 850,000 settlers now in the West Bank out of there. If you got them out and they all went home, then the votes would not be in place to keep the right wing powers in government in Israel any longer. Israel's government would then be taken over by the secular Israelis.
Exactly, and it's just weird how the people in those illegal settlements have the right to vote and are considered Israelis when they're not legally on Israeli land.
They're not legally on Israeli land. They don't live in Israel, but somehow they're Israeli citizens anyway, from the standpoint of the Israelis. And I mean, that's been a travesty because to allow that to happen basically created the situation where people, uh, has created the situation where the right wing could take over Israel politically over a period of time. So let's go back to Lath.
Unlock your brain's potential in 7 seconds a day. Science reveals how. Imagine tapping into...
Sorry, folks. More buffering now while we get back to the stream.
And how about right now the situation in the West Bank and Gaza? What do we know about that, Lay?
Yeah, well, the genocide in Gaza is accelerating, especially that the whole Western media attention is shifted to Syria. And because there's no massive response from the axis of resistance with the exit of Hezbollah from this formula. But the Yemenis are trying to fill some of this gap that Hezbollah left, but it's hard to fill because Yemen is so far away. Yesterday, Yemen announced that they fired multiple ballistic missiles and drones on Tel Aviv region, on the Eilat region in the south, and on the Golan Heights. And we heard also announcements from the Iraqi resistance that they fired a few drones on the Golan Heights. But all of this cannot fill the gap of Lebanon and Hezbollah being right on the border of Palestine. In the West Bank, things are also getting worse. You have the invasions of multiple cities and towns over the last few days, and multiple martyrs and the kidnapping operations by the Israelis in different towns and cities. And at the same time, we see an increase of the resistance operations in the West Bank. There was an operation 2 days ago, an attack on the Adyal settlement, which is a bold attack. Multiple fighters, Palestinian guerrillas, firing on this settlement and engaging the Israeli military at the checkpoint. So there is hope in the West Bank, but again, how much can they do alone? And can they even reach the military capabilities in Gaza? They can't. So, the Palestinian people are right now in their worst situation since the beginning of this genocide. In terms of the support for them globally, militarily, and so on. Even we look at the demonstrations and whatever actions that were in the West 14 months ago, how little in comparison we have now. So if Trump comes into power in January 20th, it is expected that he's going to hand over the West Bank sovereignty to the Israelis. So things are going to go downhill from there for the Palestinians if the balance of power doesn't change on the ground in Western Asia before the coming of Trump.
Before wrapping up, late, talk about your activities in Lebanon.
Okay, so that kind of does it for that. I want to reiterate again that I think that Lath is right to call for a change, okay, of strategy.
I agree.
I think between the Iraqi resistance, the Iranians, Hezbollah, the Houthis, and the Syrian resistance, there's enough capability there to create large-scale chaos, okay, in Israel, if all the capability, okay, is used. And I don't think the United States can do anything about that. Using that capability, using their full capability over a period of, let's just say, a week of constant firings of missiles, the air power of Israel would be knocked out.
It will be.
There would be societal chaos. If the missiles were directed at the settlers, lots and lots of settlers would do everything they can to get out of Israel,
Hmm.
which would change the political reality on the ground. And I think at that point that the current administration and the Trump administration, when it came back into power, would be faced with a fait accompli.
Hmm.
Is an Israel on its knees, anxious for peace, and wanting to negotiate a peace.
Hmm. Well, I have to head over to my show, and I'll see you over there.
Thank you for coming, Dee. I will be over there very, very shortly.
All righty.
Okay, bye. So, as you see, I will be going over to Dee's Around the World with Dee and Friends to help her with her show tonight. And you can join me over there after this one ends. But just to end this one, the idea of Iran and the axis of resistance changing its strategy at this point is really paramount. I think when you look at the capability of the United States, our own stores of ammunition, our own stores of various kinds of equipment are in short supply because of the Ukraine war, which drained us. and because of the war, okay, in Israel, which has also drained us, okay, considerably, as I've said, on naval resources, would also be vulnerable to the missiles, to Russian missiles, to Iranian missiles, to Houthi missiles, and we can't forget also the new Russian missile, the Oreshnik missile. Russia does have something of a stockpile of those, and they're being produced now also on a 24-hour basis. They've never been used inside of the Middle East, outside of Ukraine. They've never been used in Europe either. And one of those things, can take out any air base completely. I think the Russians have an escalation capability which is dominant. I think the idea of doing this all before Trump comes in is absolutely essential, because I think in some ways Trump is a realist. As a businessman, he was always capable of knowing that certain people were richer than himself, and that when he got into fights with them, he had to be very, very careful. He was always good at recognizing superior financial power. And I think he might not be bad if he has the right advisors at recognizing superior military power also. And I think his ideal of what would be a good deal would change if the facts on the ground in the Middle East had changed. His understanding of what he could get in terms of what is a good deal, he would also change. If he comes in with the facts on the ground, still looking like the Western powers have an upper hand, if he does decide to negotiate at all before attacking, it's going to be a wonder. But if he looks at the situation and he sees that the whole balance is shifted in favor of Iran and Russia and Hezbollah and the Houthis, okay, and the other powers, he's going to consider it a good deal if Israel survives at all. And he will be in a position to negotiate that survival, but he won't be in a position to save the greater Israel idea. Now, there's one more thing I have to say. In this description, I included a video. Jamal Thomas produced a video. Part of it involved, another interview with Laith. And in that interview, Laith talked about the position of Turkey in this conflict, in Syria. And he also talked about which way he thought that Turkey would go. Would he go with BRICS? Would Turkey go with BRICS, or would they go with the West, in the U.S.? He thought that what the U.S., in its vision of the future of the world, was offering to Turkey was just so great for Erdogan from his point of view. He thought that basically the West was offering Turkey a free hand in Central Asia if Turkey would support the West rather than the BRICS in Eurasia, okay, and in West Asia. Now Turkey has sort of turned around, and as we know, has been betraying both Putin, and the Iranians as well. And you might ask, why would they do that with all the economic promise that BRICS has? And the answer is very simple. And the way it's given by Lath, and I recommend, by the way, that video to you. That's in the description. I don't have time to cover it here. Okay, but basically, in Lath's terms, what Erdogan is being offered by the West is the resurrection of a khanate from Turkey through Central Asia, right up to the Uyghur province in China. Just a huge area that Turkey could dominate if the U.S. plans for collapsing the Russian Federation could be realized. So Lath basically thinks that Turkey has been taking up this kind of vision, and that's one of the reasons why Turkey has triggered this attack by the Islamic extremists in Syria, this effort to try to topple the regime of Assad, and the Alawites, who of course are creating a path to bring weapons from Iran into Israel. So Turkey, for the moment, has changed sides, and he thinks they have, because of the incentives the West can offer to Turkey, which of course the BRICS nations cannot. They can offer big incentives to Turkey also, but from Erdogan's point of view, perhaps not as big as what the West can offer if the visions and plans for the West should work out, which would be much more likely to happen if a greater Israel was created inside of the Middle East, and if Russia was severely weakened by a defeat, in West Asia, and if Iran was severely weakened as well, by a defeat, in West Asia. Anyway, before I leave, I wanted to point that out to you. Now I will leave and go to join D. Hopefully, I will see many of you over there at D's show, up here, around the world with D and friends. And I will see you once again on Saturday at my usual Saturday time of 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And that will undoubtedly on Saturday be a 2-hour show. So good night for now. And also thank you, Monica, for coming and for your comments. And hopefully I will see you again on Saturday. And hopefully I will see all those on Twitter who are no doubt attending this show, because we have 91 people now, who are in attendance, at least 91 people. That's what my indicator is showing. And usually that's an underestimate. So thank you again. And as I say, I will see you on Saturday.